Okay, welcome everybody. We're a little bit late, but we've been busy since 5 p.m. The board has been in closed session for the discussion of lawfully closed meeting minutes for the purposes of approval by the board. The appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, litigation, when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal. I'll entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
So, second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're in open session. Once again, welcome everybody. As always, our mission is to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. We'll start out with a roll call.
Student ambassadors present, Jody Nemethy and Jar J. Fang. Board members present, Terry Fielden, Susan Price, Jackie Romberg, Mike Yench, Dave Weeks, Susan Crotty, and Jim Dennison.
And before we move on, I'm sure it's difficult for everybody, but I really find it's hard to believe that this is the second time I've had to do this in 2 months. We're about to have 4 students from Kingsley Elementary School lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance. Before that, I'm going to ask everyone to observe a moment of silence to honor the memory of 26 people senselessly killed in Newton, Connecticut, just 3 days ago. 20 of them looked a lot like the 4 children that are going to join us in a few minutes, and the other 6 looked a lot like the teachers and administrators you see every day in this room. I ask you to join me in a moment of silent reflection for the victims, their families, and their loved ones. Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Erin Marker, principal of Kingsley Elementary School, with 4 of her star students.
Treasurer. I'm Mariah Malcheski, and I'm the recorder, and I'm in 5th grade.
And I'm Grace Wenzel, and I'm the president, and I'm in 5th grade.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remember,
Good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good gets better and your better gets best.
Thank you for having
me. Well, normally we do good news here. Perhaps it's appropriate we don't have any. Public comment. I have a couple slips of paper. Let me grab those. As always, we invite the public to comment during our public meetings. I have 2. In case we missed anyone, we also invite you to come down. I'll start off with David Fish. For the people who haven't done it before, we invite you to speak for 3 minutes, representing yourself, 5 minutes if you have a group. And also have a seat in front of the microphone. Make sure you turn it on. And you have to hit the button, make sure the light comes on. And then for the records, just lead off with your name and address, please.
Sure. David Fish, 25W550 Royce Road, Naperville, Illinois. I'm
parent of 3 young children in Riverwoods Elementary School and a District 203 taxpayer, and I wanted to address the board about an issue of fiscal responsibility. Almost 2 years ago, in February of 2011, John Carbonaro, a District 203 counselor, was charged by the DuPage County State's Attorney with aggravated criminal sexual abuse of a student. According to a Freedom of Information Act request I recently submitted, for more than 1.5 years, this school board continued to pay him his full salary to sit at home. We paid this man $100,000 in salary for doing nothing. Other school personnel who have been charged with crimes have been removed promptly from being paid by District 203. The board should not have given Carbonaro special treatment. It appears as though the board finally woke up about 2 months ago and realized it forgot to take him off the payroll. While I'm glad that the board has finally gotten around to taking him off our payroll, it should not have taken 1.5 years to do so. Equally troubling is that the board failed to publicly disclose that it kept him on the payroll for so long. Given that his arrest generated so much media and public attention, the board should have kept the public abreast of why it kept paying him and why it finally decided to cut him off. At last month's meeting, there was an excellent presentation explaining why the Finance Committee has recommended adopting an ordinance to levy the full 3% allowed under the tax cap onto the taxpayers of District 203. The public trusts this board to make smart financial decisions. We put this in your hands. But we need to know that you're not being reckless with public funds. Paying someone to sit at home for more than 1.5 years is not responsible. The $100,000 paid to Mr. Carbonaro could have purchased a lot of books, it could have gone towards teacher salaries, or it could have been put towards all-day kindergarten. As a district, we cannot afford to pay someone for not working, particularly someone who's charged with misconduct. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Campbell? Welcome. Once again, if you can start off with your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Elizabeth Liz Campbell, 202 North Ridge Avenue, Bolingbrook, Illinois. I've been a sub for this district since December of '97 when I joined the Valley View School Board. And I'm here tonight, unbeknown that you were going to talk about diversity, but just to share my story in the last 15 years. And I thought it would have gotten better, but it haven't. And over these last years, I see that your mission statement talking about collaborative and self-directed learners. And I would like you to consider my story and see where this fits in with your mission statement, and hope that you would welcome and understand these comments that I am going to make. I have been asked many questions as I suffer this district. Where did you come from? Are you a Chinese? Let the record state that I am an African American. Are you a Muslim? Where did that costume come from? Or things as, if you're an assistant, you can't be assistant and a teacher for this district. And even lately, it comes to mind is when little children, I ask these questions, I like them for teachable moments. But when I have principals and staff, I did take a teachable moment with 2 teachers who just stared at me. And I told them how I felt very uncomfortable with you staring at me and not asking me questions if you would have anything to know about me as an individual. I've been accused of sending other people to sub in my district when you only had 1 African American female, so who could that have been? I've been asked to step aside from the copier because a white female needed that spot. I've been asked, who are you subbing for, when I can't pronounce the name, and then I was taken away from that particular school. Only 1 in the district have done that. I thank God for that. So as you talk about your diversity plan, I hope some of these things would be considered, because I do like subbing in this district, and I thank you for that opportunity to share with them my values, my concern, my worth as an African American female woman in this community.
Well, thank you very much, and I know those are very valuable comments, and our diversity committee, as you'll hear later on, is still very active, so we hear you, and I would also invite you to contact or participate with them, and you have a hotline right with our district leadership. Okay, next is O.C. Davenport. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm O.C. Davenport. My address is 101 South Stauffer Drive, Naperville. I would like to talk about the dashboard, and I am very happy to see that the district is moving ahead with the Common Core and trying to put in place the measurements that will be needed to determine effective change based on the way the assessments are currently reported in the public. It is not statistically significant. And I'm hoping that with Common Core, where the students have to learn how to use appropriate statistics, that I would like to challenge you to also use appropriate statistics. I know a lot of work is going on. The dashboard is one of the first things. I believe it's a lot more, and we'll probably hear more about it tonight. But if you look at the last 10 years, based on statistically, the district has not made any progress. It's the same thing when we come to measuring how students are performance. Because we talk about meat and/or exceed. And of course, from a statistical perspective, we know that it's not significant because we're combining two categories. Therefore, we lose the information that is provided by looking at exceed, meet, and then the other two, warning, because they tell what type of improvement is needed. So once, and I know that's public information, and that's following the state guidelines. And the state guidelines were following the federal guidelines. But I'm challenging the board to take another look and see, don't we want to use statistically significant data? A little later on, when you look at some of it, you may be able to see the information that I'm referencing. I want to thank you for your time and for listening.
Thank you, O.C. And as you point out, we will be discussing dashboard later on today, so thank you. Okay, those are all the slips I have. Was there anyone else that has an urge to speak? Oh, a new guy. Come on down.
Sorry, I got here a little late.
Do you remember how this works?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, thank you. My name is Robert Bava, 921 Lindrick Court, Naperville. You mentioned earlier that the situation that happened in Connecticut is happening far too often. And while as a board you have a responsibility to the dollars that are spent, as you've heard tonight, I would ask you as a board, I had a very tough weekend watching CNN, seeing the information there, and I would ask you as a board for all of our principals, administrators, and teachers that you heighten the priority around our children and our staff's security. Whether that be additional cameras, whether that be additional attention to locked doors, more training. I would just ask you as a group that as I send my 5- and 9-year-old to school every day, so they're both between 6 and 10, I could not help but to think, if I had been one of those parents in Connecticut, what would I do? So please, as you look at all-day kindergarten, which I'm a big fan of, and you look at your other priorities, please, please, please move security up your list of priorities for the board and for the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Anyone else? Public comments?
Okay, I know you guys sit down, but I need to stand for this.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jennifer Mincallis. My address is 433 South Slate Street. I have 3 young children, 9, 7, going on 30, and 4. As we all know, and I know that the gentleman before me addressed the shooting that happened on Friday, and I'm sure it all hits home to everybody in this room. Seeing the pictures and knowing that my kids were in that age group. I know I am young, but I'm not naive. In this aspect, I ask the board to please consider doing something. I cannot imagine what they are going through and what their school board is going through. I'm sure they were at the past that after this happened, they wish they could have done something before. I know that money is tight, but I know Naperville has a terrific school. That's why I keep all my children here. I just really hope that the school board takes in consideration the safety of our children, because they are the future of our nation. Imagine, 20 children could have been president. That was cut short because security was not implemented. They mentioned that their security that they had was a buzz-in procedure. All our schools are like that. What's to stop it from getting to that point? This is kind of my first board, so I'm kind of nervous. But as a mom, I plead to every single one of you to please consider doing something, because I cannot go the next up until their high school thinking that their safety will be affected. Not saying they will, but in your aspect, you guys need to do something. And as parents, we're here to tell you to do it. So I thank you.
Since it is such a significant event, I'd ask, first of all, our superintendent to talk to 2 things. First of all, the support that you've provided today, and also the security procedures, which are standard and have been in our school anyway, especially our elementary schools. If you can comment on those 2 things for the public.
Sure. Obviously, a very unthinkable act and very difficult for any community to have to address. Support that has been provided, as many of you know, you received a Talk 203 communication from the district office as well as from buildings, indicating and referring you to resources that are available. In addition, we've ensured that we have social workers and counselors in each of our buildings to be prepared to talk with students and to talk with children, talk to parents in the event that they need assistance. That will continue as long as necessary. In terms of security procedures, we have a very active, very collaborative relationship with the Naperville Police Department and other service organizations and agencies in our community. At a minimum, annually, we have a safety procedure meeting with the Naperville Police Department where all procedures are reviewed, roles and responsibilities of individuals within our school district as well as the police department, their roles and responsibilities are reviewed. New practices and best practices are reviewed with the school district officials to ensure that our safety plans are up to date and current. Kitty Ryan and Bob Ross, the assistant superintendents for elementary and secondary education, provide most of the support to principals in terms of the engagement of the crisis plan and the safety plan. So I'll ask if either of them have anything additional they'd like to comment on regarding that.
I would say, I would echo what you just said, Mr. Bridges, and add that every school has training in emergency procedures for a violent encounter. And recently, we have had actually a lockdown in our district, and as a result of that, and every time we have an incident, thankfully they're very, very few, we do sit down with the police departments that were involved in that incident. We thoroughly debrief to see if there's anything additionally that we could do to provide safety and security for our buildings. It's always very, very, very much in our focus and something that we think about constantly. Today, principals have been communicating with Bob Ross and with me, detailing some ideas that they have that would increase security, and we will certainly be reviewing those, and I know we have full support from the board in implementing anything that we think could make a difference in terms of safety and security in our buildings. Bob?
I think the only other thing that I would add is it is probably an appropriate time, even though I know our safety meeting has occurred already. It might be wise if we could just touch base with the Naperville Police Department and our resource there, and just perhaps talk through the scenario and the situation as it's understood now, and see if there's any learnings for us as a district that we could consider.
It's obviously a very serious issue. That's why I'm more than willing to spend a few minutes on it. But it's more a reflection of our society than our security procedures. I mean, if someone that is heavily armed is intent on getting into a building, unless it's Fort Knox, they can get in. I mean, it's sad but true. We can unless we put bulletproof glass and armored doors on every building we have, somebody can get in. So it becomes more of a societal question than what we can do. What we have done is make sure that within our power we control access, and then we have procedures if, God forbid, anyone gets access. We're doing everything we can, and we continue to do it because as Rob said earlier, and other people have mentioned, the safety of our children is our number one priority, even before their education. Their safety is our absolute number one priority, and we'll do everything we can. So it was a horrible thing, but we can only do so much as a school district, and we'll continue to do everything we can. And I appreciate you coming out here and sharing your thoughts. Anyone else? Okay. Now, on that note, we'll turn it over to our student ambassadors. Who'd like to go first?
Good evening. I'd like to start my report by saying that all of us at Naperville Central are proud to be members of the NCHS community, students and staff driven to achieve success and make positive contributions through hard work and collaborative contributions surround us all. Among other tools, their innovative and responsible application of technology has expanded the breadth of their influence. This evening, I would actually like to highlight the multitude of positive contributions that Central staff and students have made to our community. Last week, the Student Advisory Council sold 530 pictures with Santa. The SAC will donate these funds to the building of the NCHS Athletic Hall of Fame. Also, the SAC has made 2 additional trips to Hesed House as volunteers to donate their time to help those less fortunate as we move into the holiday season. Recently, the Senior Class Council bought over $500 worth of toys for the Brady Toy Drive as they work to make sure that Christmas morning is as magical for all children as it is for us. Furthermore, all the class councils at Naperville Central are helping to plan an informal dance to break the monotony of winter in January and February. The proceeds from ticket sales will be donated to further develop the Honor Garden. To wrap it all up, the Naperville Central High School Policy Initiatives Group is planning an educational evening of seminars, activities, food, and prizes for all Naperville residents. It will be on the evening of January 24th at Naperville Central High School. As president and founder of the group, I would like to extend a warm welcome and invitation to board members, administrators, and Naperville residents to learn about ways you can help to reduce your carbon footprint. On another note, today, Principal Wiesbrook reminded students and staff that despite standard security procedures and precautions, the constant vigilance of the Naperville Central community is the most important aspect of ensuring our own safety. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time and wish you all happy holidays.
Thanks, George. That was a very nice report. So, beautiful language, if I may. So I want to start off on a pretty good note. Just throw it out there, the Naperville North varsity dance team took first place at DBC this last Wednesday evening, which was very exciting. I'm on the dance team, so it was a pretty big deal to us. This was the final DBC to be held, DuPage Valley Conference. Spirit Spectacular, I believe, was the final name of it. So it was a pretty big deal to have happen at North for the final time. So as we approach second semester, course recommendations are well underway, and seniors are beginning to hear back from colleges, applying for scholarships, and getting ready for the next chapter in life. And just last Friday, I actually had the privilege of attending the Naperville Youth Ambassadors Leadership Conference, which was basically a chance for leaders from North Central NEQA to get together and collaborate from all different activities and clubs and find better ways to improve their ways around school. North actually is thinking about adopting a similar site to Neuqua Valley's Splash page. This would incorporate all forms of social media outlets, uses communication tools to be centralized into one general location. Because there's so many Facebook groups, Twitter accounts, all giving updates on sporting events, new club opportunities, information about school dances and things like this, we just want to centralize that into one general location. Now, this is not to be confused with the academic page that Naperville North and all schools in the district have. With that being said, Husky Vision is a journalism and broadcasting club that would actually be looking to take over this, and I'll give you more updates when we hear back from them in the future. One other thing we are thinking about adopting actually comes from Central, and this is called the Tireless Teacher Award. And this is going to be kind of a pilot program second semester, but basically it's recognizing one teacher per month, so it's a teacher of the month kind of thing, created by students. And it's called the Tireless Teacher because it's literally going to be a golden rim. So it's kind of like a tireless teacher, if you get a tire. Okay. It's kind of cute, and it's going to pass around through the teachers. Hopefully we can get their names on a plaque, and that's just for the teachers that go above and beyond on a daily basis, and just for them to get recognized by the students. And last thing I have, this is a little lovey-dovey, but I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the board for allowing me to be the communication between North and the school board and vice versa. Coming up on my last couple of months here at North, I start to realize that things are really important to me, and opportunities like this are really a nice privilege. So thank you to everyone. Hope you guys have a happy holidays.
Thank you. Awesome job, both of you.
Oh, tireless. I get it. Okay. Written communications. Your FOIA reports are posted there for everyone to look at. Superintendent, staff, and school reports.
Great. Tonight, my report will be an update to the Board of Education on activities that are related to the district's diversity action plan. I'd like to begin with a little bit of good news and celebration regarding recognition that the district has received this year in regard to some of its efforts. Last week, I was invited to attend the DuPage County NAACP annual meeting where we received recognition. I had an opportunity to receive a recognition from the DuPage branch of the NAACP, recognizing with appreciation and esteemed community leadership honoree for contributions and commitment to the branch and the community. O.C. Davenport, who's here, also was recognized by the branch. In addition, Tommy Johnson, a retired counselor from Naperville North High School who continues to work with our students in the Pride Mentoring Program, was recognized, and Jeff DiOrio, Naperville North teacher who started a chess club with some support from the NAACP for students. So some of the work and the efforts that we've been initiating have been recognized, and that's greatly appreciated. Tonight's update is going to focus on two activities contained within the action plan. First, I'll share feedback we received from the first meeting of the Diversity Awareness Council. And then next, Tim Warenga will preview for the Board of Education the initial stage of our data dashboard. The Diversity Awareness Council met for the first time on Tuesday, November 27, 2012, here at PSAC at 7 o'clock. The council is comprised of staff members and parents, And the purpose of the council is to provide feedback to the administration regarding what is working and areas where we can improve. We ask that members use their unique knowledge and experiences to inform us in our planning. 24 individuals were invited to attend. All 24 invited expressed interest in serving. 18 of the individuals were able to attend the meeting. Dick Howard, HR consultant, Susan Rice, Julie Carlson, and I also attended the meeting. We began with an overview of the Diversity Action Plan. After the presentation, participants were asked to work in small groups. It was a work group session on a 3-2-1 activity. The groups were asked to identify at least 3 things they liked about the plan, 2 things contained within the plan that they'd like to learn more information about, and 1 new idea that they wonder if we had considered or would like us to think about. Some of the things that they liked, some of the feedback we received from them that they liked. The 5 Essentials survey that we'll be administering in the spring. They indicated that surveying our parent and our student population would be a positive for us and hopefully give us good information and data that we could use in future planning. The plans that we've discussed within the plan for training and in-services. This plan specifically focuses more on principals and district administrators, but they saw that as a strength and initially beginning with that group to get some leadership within the buildings and then work that down through the buildings. Plans that were discussed for sharing ideas and initiatives and events between schools. They applauded the commitment that the board and the administration has put on this initiative by having an accountability plan within the Diversity Action Plan. They also appreciated the plan for the resources for new families that will be discussed at a future board meeting. The major topics they wanted to learn more about, the two really kind of came down to 2 significant topics they wanted more information from us on that we will gear our January meeting toward, and that's an overview of the survey itself. While they liked the idea of having the survey, they wanted to get a little more detailed information about the survey that we will be conducting beginning in February. And then also, they appreciated hearing that the Human Resources Office has been conducting an audit and a review of our hiring practices. And they hope to be able to hear a report and some information on how that audit is done, how that review is done, and our strategies for trying to recruit minority candidates to teach in our school district. They also generated a long list of ideas that they'd like us to consider. Most ideas focused on expanding the current plan and several ideas that they would like to see in future plans. Our next meeting, as I mentioned, is scheduled for late January, and I did give participants a homework assignment. They were asked to refer at least 1 new individual to be considered for addition to the council. Of those that were not able to attend, most of those individuals were parents, so we want to ensure that we have the parent participation at each of our council meetings. So in the plan, the next milestone date is an update to the Board of Education in February, where you'll hear an overview of the Parent Resource Program that I mentioned. Take any questions you have about the Awareness Council.
What, if you could, one of my questions has always been, I was fortunate enough to participate with a different diversity committee several years ago, and the one thing I never saw is where the rubber meets the road. You're getting there, it seems, but when you have lack of cultural awareness in schools, whether it be about religion or culture or race, how are you going to address that or planning on attempting to address that?
I'm going to talk about how we're going to begin to plan to address that. And what we believe in, what the diversity committee that worked over the course of last year believed, is that the first step we need is a more thorough and a better understanding of who we are as a community, what our student body looks like, the experiences of our student body, what our staff looks like. It is our staff reflective of our school community, which we know it's not, and that we need to get better in that area. But the first step, we believe, is an awareness and an understanding of who we are, and so we think the survey itself is going to give us a lot of information that's going to be useful to us in determining those next steps.
Okay, so we're still not there for
We're not there yet.
Doing anything.
Well, I would argue that the plan itself has a number of measurable activities within it. Plans in the past had lacked any accountability or timeline, as I understood it. This plan we put together has milestones like updates tonight, so that it's something that this Board of Education knows and values as important that we continue to work, so it's not something that's set aside. So, when we look at the survey, for example, that'll be one important milestone. The opportunity to Tim to present the initial stage and draft of our data dashboard, which is a huge communication tool for us in communicating to the community who we are and helping our community get a better sense of. One thing that I shared with the Diversity Awareness Council council last week was the change in our demographic as it relates to low-income students. And I was able to just kind of take a time out during the meeting and go to the Illinois Interactive Report Card and show them the increase in enrollment in our third grade, for example, population of students who are now low income is dramatic. They responded in a way that they had no idea that our community had changed so much. So I would say that our end goal is that this committee is obsolete, that there's not a need for this committee anymore because we've built a sense of inclusion within our community, which is our school community. And we're not there yet, and that's going to take some time to get there.
Yeah, I appreciate the question you ask, and I'm going to actually respond a little bit to it, but I'm glad you asked it because I think the administration is understanding we're not going to let up on it, and I appreciate that. I know that we have, growing out of the committee I served on with Carol Hetman and Cheryl, implemented some specific steps for getting better at attracting minority candidates. Everything from building a relationship. I know Dan's already started building a relationship with the DuPage and the NAACP, but also some hiring practices, some training. So I think there has been some implementation. We're a long, long way from there, and we will continue to ask you about it. But I felt, because I know that that's exactly what's happened in the past, and I think I've shared with the board before, but I do feel like this time there was some traction. We ain't going very fast yet, but to me it was there were measurable steps, which instead of just talking along the thing. So I'm glad to see that.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. What I'm going to ask Tim to do now is a start for us. It is something that we identified as a part of the diversity committee that we thought would be important to help us as an administration, help our teachers get a better sense of who's sitting in our classrooms. So we've published and live on our website right now is a data dashboard, and Tim's going to give you an overview of that data dashboard and what's contained in it, and he'll talk a little bit more specifically about opportunities our staff has with the software that we're using. Tim?
Thank you. Again, I'd like to share with you our first data dashboard for the district that's actually on our website. I'd like to demonstrate it to you in several regards. First of all, we have a static view that we have available, and then also there's a dynamic view that we can pull into this dashboard using the interactive report card. So if you look at our website, if you look under the About 203, you can see there's a new choice there called District Dashboards. That's one way to get to the dashboards, but an even more evident one is if you go down on the right-hand side here, we have an actual button here that you can choose. We have it linked in several different departments. For instance, it's linked in the About 203 section, but it's also linked in the Assessment section, so that we're trying to make this as evident as possible to get people so that they can see what this is. So if you click on that link, you come to our static view of the dashboards, which gives a little description about this being a basic look at academic overall information about our district, similar to what we do every year with AYP information. And then we also have some demographic information. So there's 4 basic graphs here that are shown, a description of the ISAT and what has happened on the ISAT, how we've done on the ISAT in terms of, as OC had mentioned before, meets and exceeds. A nice piece to this is actually taken from our Pinnacle Insight application. It allows us to be able to look at this in terms of the exceeds is in blue and the meets is in green, and then we have the does not meet in yellow and then the academic warning in red on this. And so you can see a graphical representation also about how our district is doing in those areas, in this case in the ISAT. Also here is our Prairie State information over the last since 2007-08 until this past spring. And then we have a listing of the ethnicity of our students using a pie chart representation instead of the bar chart that we had in the previous graph. This gives not only the pie chart information, but does give the actual breakdown on the legend there on your right. And then also we have a graph that just shows the enrollment by grade level in our district, and what that looks like in terms of how our different grades are in size. So that's the static view of our dashboard. You can then get a more interactive view where we post this actual link to the Illinois Interactive Report Card, which is available to anybody through Northern Illinois University. And this links straight to the District Interactive Report Card, which allows people to take and to change whatever they'd like to. If they want to look at ISAT at Prairie State, they can look at different performance information from these different tests, including the Access, the IAA. They can also sort those in different categories. You can sort by grade once you get to this. You can sort by subject, by student groups, and you can use, in this case, AYP subcategories: gender, ethnicity, limited English proficiency students, and our IEP students, and low income. You can also look at this, and then it provides a similar type of graph for the viewer to the one that we just saw, and it gives it in different breakdowns where somebody can explore that information. Again, this is two different views. The one we have on our website is a static view, and this is a more interactive view for our report card. Are there any questions on the district dashboards?
What's the future? I mean, this is great stuff, and it's basically making available stuff much more readily available, because it's all off the available on report cards. Is there a future expansion
Yes,
plan?
in fact, our next plan is we're actually creating the ones for the, not the public view, but for the district and the school and the teacher views, so that each of those different groups can go online into Pinnacle Insight and immediately will come up their own dashboard that will be interactive to be able to go to the different tests, including not only these, but other ones that we've designated for the data to flow into. And then as we take more feedback, and also following the direction of not only the diversity committee, but other groups, looking at our district dashboard, this is version 1. We'll look at the feedback from that as to how we build out our own dashboard on the website.
Tim, about a month ago, you and a number of the other administrators had talked about the school improvement plans and how those are going to be living, breathing documents now, unlike not just do them and kind of put them on a shelf. Some of them are 3 years, some are more than that. Where the individual school improvement plans, some of them do involve some of these criteria, some don't. Would it be possible to link those so, they all work together? Is that possible?
Yeah, let me get, if you could clarify for me, just link the plan to the
Well,
website?
not exactly. Some of the schools have specific targets,
Yes.
what they're doing. Not all schools have ISAT targets, for example, or some of these measurable matrix. Some of them do and some of them don't. But those schools that do, would it be fair to tie this to that, just to make it that much? The more information I, as one board member, can have that relates, it's just more helpful to me.
And that's actually one of the ultimate goals, at least at the school level at this point, because part of the Insight tool, why we have to make it static, is because behind it is all the students and their information. So for right now, it's difficult to separate those two, except at this kind of level, make it static for our views,
Right.
and then be able to look at the interactive report card. For the school view, we can actually start building those where they can bookmark certain data sets of students and tests,
Right.
and then what they're targeting, and then watch those grow over time in order to see how they're actually performing on those. It will be a task, but it's one of those things to be able to get those so that we can see those kind of views and be able to reveal them more to the public, as long as we don't compromise the privacy of our students at the
Right,
same
of course
time.
not, but these are goals that those SIP teams, or whatever they call them, school improvement teams, have thought are important to their buildings.
Yes.
So obviously to their school communities too.
Yes.
So
So
sounds great.
we're still building out the district. This was first to get the public one up.
Right.
We're working on the district one first,
Right.
and then we're going to build it down to the school level. And then each teacher will actually have their own dashboard that they'll be able to set up views for to watch their own student progress as well.
Great, thank you.
Wonderful. Anything else? Thank you very much.
We'll let Tim stay right where he's at. The next report we have for the Board of Education is really going to be the first in a three-part conversation with the Board of Education about languages. Today, Tim is going to present to the Board of Education results from a recent immersion survey that was conducted. The January 7th meeting, our team will come back and provide you with a report out on the the program review that was done of our current dual language program. And then what we'd like to plan for the February Board of Education work session is a more in-depth conversation and work session with the Board of Education on our current programs. So we'll kick it off tonight with Tim presenting the results of the language immersion survey.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Again, this presentation is to report the data from the survey that we had in November and ending just as we started December. This is to inform future conversations concerning one-way immersion, where students will spend their day learning in a language other than English, is what the language immersion program was designed to survey concerning. And in order to find out information about our public view of that, what we did was we took a survey at our preschools, and I'll talk about our survey methodology in just a moment, but some of the key findings we had in this survey was, as you can see here, 36% of our respondents told us that they were either likely or very likely to enroll their child in an immersion program. The respondents, given several choices, actually responded that they were most interested in Spanish and Chinese language programs. This respondents also strongly preferred to stay in their home school, as you'll see in some of the graphs we have built here. And then also that there was, even though there was, as you can see here, some interest, even those who were interested presented us with some concerns that they wanted to make sure were handled strategically because of the concerns for their children. What was interesting about that was that not only the ones that decided to be in the program and those who said that they would choose not to be in the program had very similar concerns about the program. So first of all, our survey methodology. Again, we ended the survey as we started. Our window ended as we started December, on December 5th, as part of what we did. We invited our students and parents, the families from our preschool, and Reed, to respond to the survey. And so a Talk 203 was sent out to those families, and they were asked to respond to that. Also, we solicited the private preschools in our area. We contacted 37 of our private preschools and solicited their help in sending this out. They sent out a similar Talk 203 message to their families and solicited their responses. Non-residents were at this point then screened out as part of the process. Respondents in the survey were given at first the opportunity to watch a video. They clicked on a video to watch what it was, when we talk about language immersion, what does that mean, and talk about the benefits of a language immersion program. At this point, we had 282 people enter into the survey. At this point, 100 people did exit out and not finish the survey. So just as part of the data set, we had 100 folks that did not proceed past the video. It was a 6-minute video. We had, from Ann Reed, we had several hundred, and then from outside of that, we did not ask for names and emails, so because of the response was fairly equal between the residents, and the district and the private preschools, I'm assuming that it was a similar amount of families as well. Okay, and again, once they gave an answer, we then branched the question. So if they answered a certain way, it then would ask follow-up questions. If they were, say, likely to enroll if given the opportunity in an immersion program. It branched to certain questions. If they were unlikely to, it would then branch to other questions to ask for responses. The characteristics of those who responded, as you can see, we had here an almost equal representation between district and private, those who responded. Each one of our 14 district elementary schools had respondents, so we had between 4 and 19 families from each of those schools respond. And then nearly half of them will have children in kindergarten next year. There were some who will have children down the road as part of the preschool programs that we did speak with. We did then ask them to tell us, we asked a question about what was a one-way language immersion program. The answer to the question was actually the first one, that most subjects are taught in a language other than English. We had about 2/3 of our respondents respond correctly to that, showing that still, even though there was a 6-minute video and there was time for them to learn about it, that there's still some misconception at times with this information. But also we need to point out that there's no way to know for sure whether the respondents here actually watched the whole video. They had to click on it and it took them to another video, but they could have gone back without watching. So as best as we can tell from the information, we had a good amount to understand the immersion program from that.
Tim, can I ask you a question on that specifically? I got the link too late to watch it. With the dual immersion program, they move from 80% to 50% from K through 5. Are you saying with one-way immersion, they stay 100% the whole 5 years or 6 years?
It depends on the model, but it would not be for the entire 6 years. No, it would be starting out at this level. So this would be the initial part to the program. They'd start at this level.
Was the question asked that way?
I believe it was asked in regards to the kindergarten program. So when the video was speaking about early childhood in terms of the early grades of it.
Because obviously it's important that parents realize that when they're in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they're also being taught in their home language also.
Okay. Yes. We'll make sure that's part of the communication in the future. So, okay. Here's the response of the likelihood of parents and the families to enroll their children. As you can see in the top 2 categories, which we considered the very likely or likely categories, we had 36% of our families respond that they were likely or very likely to enroll. Again, once they answered any of the top 4 categories, which the bottom 3 is about 30% of our students, so 30% of the families. So 30% of the families were branched one direction, whereas the others, the top 4 categories, were branched into asking more information about things like transportation or about language, things like that, as part of the survey. So at this point, we got a lot of information about how likely someone would be to join the program. This next graph gives some information about how the location would impact the choices. This was using an analysis of means tool in order to do that. The band you see in the middle is actually, anything inside of that band is there's no significant difference from the mean in terms of that score. So as you can see, there's a significant difference for the home school since it's far above the band for the mean, and then the other school, if they had to drive their drop their students off at school, that's significantly below the mean, which would tell us that would have a significant impact in a negative regards to participating in the program. Similarly, on this graph, when we talk about analysis of means for the languages themselves, the average band is in the middle, and anything inside that band could be considered statistically the same as the mean. Anything below that band would be considered statistically less than that mean. So as you see from this graph, Mandarin Chinese and Spanish were the two that came out as an outcome as ones that actually had significant interest in terms of enrollment in the program.
Tim, were these the only languages that were proffered?
Yes, these were the only ones asked.
And was the question asked if they couldn't choose their language? Do we know whether that would affect? In other words, a person says, yeah, but I really want Mandarin Chinese. If that's not what's being offered, did that affect their likelihood?
Yes. That was also in a different question, but I did include the actual questions in the back. And the way it was actually phrased is, please tell us how likely you are to enroll your child in a program offered in these languages. And so it gives them the opportunity to choose those. Does that answer your question?
It certainly does, but therefore these results are fairly closely linked to a specific language.
Yes.
And we didn't ask them, regardless of language offered, would you be likely or unlikely?
No, we did.
So the implication was they could choose what language they were going to participate in.
Yeah, so in this one, actually, when the first question was asked, irregardless, would you be willing to enroll? And then, once they answered this one, then it branched them to which language they would choose.
Okay, so the initial responses was agnostic on language choice.
Correct.
Thanks.
Okay, this next graph here talks to us about if, again, trying to pair some of the variables together to see what the responses were like. The significance of this one is actually that there is no difference between the different languages when it comes to how a parent would make their choices whether to attend or not. The likelihood whether they would drive or be bused or if they're homeschool. It was the same whichever language they selected. Yeah. It was almost, it was very, very precise there. This next graph actually tries to tie together that idea of the concerns. Given these different concerns, then also how does that tie to the other information given of likelihood to enroll? As you can see, one of the pieces of information out of this is the more likely somebody is to enroll, the less likely they are to have the more significant concerns. So the bar graphs are higher when it comes to the ones that are less likely to enroll. But it also shows that there are some significant strategic types of issues that parents would like us to address in terms of how an immersion program would be handled as part of this. And then this last graph gives us some information again from those who said that they were not interested and some of the likelihood. The other category gave the opportunity for the families to then enter in a comment. And I included in the board documents an appendix that had verbatim the comments that were listed there for both those who were likely to enroll and also those who were not likely. This just gives a bit of a summary as to those. Yes.
When you look at that question, it looks like on your background only 36 people answered that question and 246 skipped that question.
Yes, because it says skipped is because those who said they were likely to enroll, they were branched to different directions, so they had to skip it. And then also the 100 that got the video and then didn't go any further also skipped that question.
So only 30% were asked that question.
That is correct. 30% of those who responded, yes. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay. How do you interpret these, Tim?
Pretty straightforward to me that in the data listed here is that there are some families who are interested in an immersion program, but they're interested in making sure that the issues that they see as of concern be something that were discussed as part of this. So this is just an interest inventory, but there are other issues that they would like to see as part of the discussion as part of this information. Anything else on that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. I can say that my initial reaction when I was looking at it at home was that, our goal is not to have everybody in immersion language. So, we'd be in trouble if 100% came back and said we're likely to enroll. In fact, over 50% said somewhat likely or better. I thought that was fairly significant. Now, I have no idea. Looks to me like about 20% of the invitees responded. Just guessing. Is that anywhere near right? 282 is probably about 20% of the number of people that were invited.
I'd say
20 to 30.
Yeah, about that.
But I thought it was pretty interesting. And I just wondered if you agreed that it did show some tacit interest in this concept.
Yeah, and again, building in that other piece where those who were given the opportunity to participate, we had only a percentage that participated. I'd say a good percentage according to how surveys are taken. Surveys, you typically, if you get 30%, you're actually in good shape. From there, the fact that 100 folks did not want to go past the actual video and participate in that also is significant data as part of that. So those who were interested enough or invested enough to come through and give more information, this survey provided a lot of good information for us.
I think there's something else really interesting that this data shows, and that's whatever community they're in, they want to stay there, which is like indicative of, it doesn't matter if we looked at boundaries or all-day kindergarten, our community tells us the same thing over and over again. They love the communities they're in, and everybody, there was no one school last year that they wanted to be at, they just want to be at their school.
Absolutely.
And I love that.
I thought that's what you said, but then I saw the chart, and what the chart definitely said was, I ain't driving my kid. But it gave reasonable, it was within the blue bar for being bused to another school. So
in a consideration, yes.
Right. So it certainly didn't say I'm not interested unless they can be at my school, although I think that's our goal, but they definitely said I'm not going to drive them.
I have a question. Do you think there's enough interest overall to develop a program from what you've got here on results?
I think that's worth a conversation and not from just my point of view. When I look at these survey results, I think that they point to needing to have a strategic conversation about it because of the fact that there's a significant group of our preschool students' families who have an interest. I think that means that it furthers the conversation as part of it.
I think we need to answer that question in context of the January 7th conversation that we'll have too regarding current programs that we offer.
Yeah. The other thing is, I noticed that leaning towards Spanish. Do you think people just more familiar with Spanish versus the other languages, or just in general? I mean,
I think that's probably the more familiar language, yes, in this region. So.
It's also the only Latin-based language you query about.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to have some bearing.
Mm-hmm.
One data point I'm curious about, I forget if I asked it this year yet, maybe Kitty can address it. We have it in 4 schools and in a magnet program, correct? Mm-hmm. Are we still oversubscribed in each of those schools, as far, especially with English speakers? Do we have a lottery in each school?
No. Well, let me say this. Catherine actually is here in June night. Do we, not in every school in every grade, do we have a waiting list, if you will?
Well, it only counts in kindergarten. It only counts in kindergarten.
Yeah.
You don't have a waiting list in 5th grade.
We don't have a waiting list in every single school. No, we don't.
Not even in kindergarten.
No, not in every single school, not at every site.
Magnet program?
Magnet program, yes.
And we're talking English speakers, not necessarily,
I believe, and I'm looking back at my colleagues, we're actually talking both.
Female and male.
Yeah,
I didn't hear that.
we're talking both English speakers and Spanish speakers
There's a waiting
in the dual language program, the Magnet dual language program. Correct. Fewer Spanish speakers, but we have waiting lists for both. Am I clear?
Okay, you just contradicted
I don't know if
yourself.
that's Catherine or Julie, I can't see who's speaking. Maybe if you approach the mic.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I know we have a limited, we talked about the increasing numbers. We have a limited number of Spanish speakers for the dual language program.
There's less on the waiting list.
My question is, in the 4 schools that have it organically, are there every year enough people interested in the program in the kindergarten year?
Yes.
So there is a waiting list in each of the schools.
There is not currently a waiting list for English speakers at BB, but there is a significant waiting list for the Magnet School. There's over 20 for females and over 20 for males.
Yeah, I'm not worried about
At Maplebrook.
Okay.
And then at Steeple Run, there's not currently an English, there is an English waiting list for Steeple, there is an English wait list for Elmwood, but not for Spanish speakers.
Okay, and we're talking for next year when this
No,
is
for
current
this
data?
current year, so that if a student were to leave, we would still put in English first
Oh, you would add
students
somebody.
until until October of first grade.
And when do you put out the requests for the 13-14 year? Oh, the
The-
12-13, I guess. 12-13.
The
13-14.
The first pamphlet will go in the January mailing for kindergarten registration, and then we will have our kindergarten meeting on April 18th.
Okay, so we won't have that data until April, I guess. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Another question, Tim, and this was brought up in some of the comments, and people, would someone with a special needs child or someone with an IEP, would that necessarily keep them out of this program, or is that way too down the road to even talk about?
That's part of the strategic conversations, but there is sometimes limitations as to other magnet pieces to what we do and what can be offered in these programs. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Thank you very much, Tim. Anything else?
No.
Okay, I don't have anything. Are there any Board of Education reports? Then we're on to our monthly reports. Treasurer's investments, insurance, budget. Any comments on those or questions? Yes.
Just an observation on the insurance report. David, thanks for that added information. I thought was really good, and I expressed that to you very privately, but I wanted to mention it. And could I just ask a question or two on the budget report? Some significant overages and underages. I'm going to assume it's simply timing, but I was just curious. Operations and maintenance. I assume that we've and this is fiscal year, correct?
Yes.
So that did include the summer already, right? And we've spent a few $1 million less than what we projected. Do we have a major project coming up? Or I would have thought that, if anything, we spend more during the summer.
Yeah, it's more timing, and it's half the summer because it's June 30.
Oh, okay.
June 30, July 1. And last year, a lot more got accomplished during the summer initially. So you saw more acceleration in Steve's here as well. The difference is capital or the renovations repair account in this case right here. And the other thing, I made a little notation down at the bottom. We had an additional payroll in November this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
And because we have 26 pay periods per year, twice during the year we have 3 pay periods in a month. Last year it occurred in December. This year it occurred in November. So that's why you see that distinction, that difference
And
relative to our rate of expenditure.
And that would be why we quote, looks like we overspent on
Yes,
education.
you'll see it,
Yeah.
you'll see it
Great,
come
good.
back into line
Yep.
in December.
Yep. And then the debt service is way skewed. Is that just because of the timing of state reimbursements and stuff like that?
No, it's because all of the funding for debt service is a transfer from the education fund since we abated the full amount.
Okay.
And I haven't made that transfer. We traditionally do our transfers in the second half of the fiscal year.
So there are really no major anomalies that you
No.
see. Thanks.
Any other questions before I turn it over to Mr. Weeks?
I had the privilege of reviewing several $1 million worth of disbursements to Dave Zager. I guess it was by Dave. It wasn't to you, was it?
Not that I recall.
Yeah. So I move approval of warrant number 374444 through warrant number 375195, totaling $17,553,818.42 for the period of November 20, 2012 to December 17th, 2012. In addition, I move the approval of the items listed under consent, approval by consent. That would be items 8.01 through 8.07.
Second.
Will you? Okay, before the second?
Yeah,
The second. Okay,
that's
second.
why I raised my hand,
I'll
sorry.
second on the modification.
You two were sitting next to each other. You couldn't work this out?
It did. Yeah, I shared.
Okay. Okay, so you second the amended motion?
So the motion would be
Thank you.
approve items 801 through 803 and 805 through 807.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent
That's
agenda
okay.
with the exception of 8.04. Roll call?
Rumber?
Yes.
Crotty? Yes. Dennison? Yes. Weeks? Aye. Yench?
Aye.
Price?
Yes.
Fielden?
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. 8.04, anyone?
I just wanted to pull that one so I could abstain because I worked closely with them and didn't feel that it was fair for me to vote on that, so.
Fair enough, thank you.
I move approval of item number 804, 8.04.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve 8.04. Roll call?
Fielden?
Yes.
Rumber?
Yes.
Weeks? Aye. Crotty? Abstain. Yench?
Aye.
Dennison? Yes. Price?
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. Okay, on to discussion without action, and I guess we'll talk about kindergarten.
Really?
Invite the team to come forward. And as they come up and prepare, I'll make some opening comments. This evening, the administrative team will be presenting a recommendation to the Board of Education regarding an all-day kindergarten option that could begin next year. Presentation will discuss the rationale for all-day kindergarten and the planning considerations that have led to the recommendation being made. As you know, kindergarten has been a topic of conversation in our community for quite a while, but I'm going to take us back to 1917 to be exact. 1917 was the year,
History guy.
best we can tell, when we began our half-day kindergarten program. The next big conversation regarding kindergarten came in 1928, when the Board of Education designated space in Ellsworth and Napier for kindergarten. These would be the first rooms designated as kindergarten-only classrooms. As we all know, certainly since that time, there have been revisions to curriculum, improvements in instructional strategies, and advances in technology that have benefited the kindergarten program. But I think it's fair to say we've been operating under a kindergarten program that's essentially under the same structure since we introduced it to our community. And much in the world has changed since 1928, and I believe much will continue to change in the years ahead. Our district is a very high-achieving district. It's one that's achieved at a high level while implementing its current model. And it's exciting for me to think about the level of achievement we could experience by providing additional instructional time, greater access to curriculum, and time for exploration and experimentation. Since November of 2011, this administration has spoken to the Board of Education regarding its desire to offer an all-day kindergarten option to students. Since authority was given to pursue an option, the board has heard presentations from the administration in January 2012, February 2012, and March 2012, when the administration at that time requested the item be removed from the board's agenda. At the November 5th Board of Education meeting this year, the administration once again requested permission for the board to begin planning for an all-day option. At that meeting, the board authorized the administration to develop a recommendation for a targeted all-day kindergarten program. So tonight we'll share a recommendation for next year, but I think it's fair to say to keep in mind that as an administration, we see down the road the importance of offering this program to all of our students. With that, I'll turn it over to the team. We have a lot of information that we're going to present to you, and I'm going to ask the board's indulgence and ask if they can get through the presentation and then come back for questions. Go ahead.
So in this presentation, we'll go over the rationale for all-day kindergarten, the planning considerations, and then finally the recommendation. Our presentation will focus on why. Why is all-day kindergarten important? Why do we feel it's important for all of our students? It will focus on the what, just a reminder and a review of what all-day kindergarten is, and then go in very deeply into how we would accomplish achieving all-day kindergarten for our students.
And when we talk about the why is simple, and we feel that it's very compelling. We think that all students deserve the best possible opportunity to achieve the District 203 mission, and we believe that all-day kindergarten increases our ability to deliver on that promise.
All-day kindergarten is a full day of learning that is intentionally responsive to our kindergarten students' needs for content learning in math, in literacy, in social studies and science, and the arts, and it also helps them to develop the critical thinking that is much needed in each of those content areas. Very importantly, for our 5- and 6-year-old students, it provides them with the opportunity for curiosity and time for discovery. It provides them with an opportunity to interact socially with their peers, have more time for social interaction, and also achieve a level of independence and self-directed learning. And it provides them with ample opportunity for movement throughout the day in both planned and in spontaneous ways. Anyone who's spent time with a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old knows that it's a time of rapid learning and wonder. They don't all learn at the same pace. They don't all do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. But with the intentional direction of a teacher and the focus, we believe that all-day kindergarten is really an opportunity to capture that unique window of time and to really develop and serve as the foundation of learning for our K-3 pathway and not just that first step into our schools. In looking further into the what, this is something that we shared last year. This is at a glance of what we gained, that gift of time, in the contact minutes per day, and then looking at the half-day and the all-day program in instructional minutes. In looking just one step deeper, at the next slide, this is just an example of a sample time allocation. We are required by the state of Illinois to provide a half-day program. This gives you an idea of what the sample time allocation looks like in the half-day program. And then looking at the sample time allocation of what it would look like in all of our subject areas and additional areas in the all-day program.
And so when we looked carefully at all-day kindergarten, we wanted to have a lens or a way to really evaluate how it would impact learning. And we believe strongly that the programs that we look at need to be effective. And when we say effective, that means that they need to maximize learning opportunities for students. They need to be equitable. And by that we mean they need to provide learning opportunities for students in a way that meets their individual needs. And finally, we said it needs to be efficient. And by that we meant that it leverages all available resources in a manner that is fiscally responsible.
So in looking at options for how we could achieve our goal of providing all-day kindergarten for our students, we looked at basically three options, and then moving us to what we would hope in providing all-day kindergarten for all students. What you'll see are 3 models on the screen, with the 4th being all-day kindergarten for all students. You'll see the impact. We considered the impact on students, and then we considered the fiscal impact in terms of what that impact would be operationally, and then what it would be from a capital standpoint. The first option or model that you see on the screen would be Title I. It would be all-day kindergarten for students in Title I schools with space for all-day kindergarten. And just to clarify, that means that all kindergartners in those buildings would receive all-day kindergarten. The second model that you see is providing all-day kindergarten in all of our Title I schools. And again, that would mean that all kindergartners in those schools would receive the all-day kindergarten program. And then the next one is to provide all-day kindergarten for all schools with space for all-day K. And then lastly, you see that we were always comparing it and looking toward all-day kindergarten for all students.
And then we briefly listed what we believe to be the impact on students and sort of the pluses and minuses of each one of these models. Again, looking at the operational and capital costs for these. I think that is self-explanatory there in terms of what that would mean.
So when we think about our recommendation to this Board of Education this evening, our recommendation is that we implement all-day kindergarten as an option for all students at all Title I schools beginning next school year. With us continuing to move forward with studying and examining a recommendation that could potentially come forward with the Board's authorization for offering all-day kindergarten at all schools at some point in the future. So our recommendation for next year is all Title I schools would have the opportunity to offer all-day kindergarten to their students.
So now we want to talk with you a little bit about the how. How would we go? How would we do this? We want to talk with you a little bit about what curriculum and instruction would look like, the professional learning opportunities that we would provide for staff, logistical and operational considerations, budget implications, what would the implementation plan look like, and finally, what would program evaluation look like?
So in talking about curriculum and instruction, we've already talked several times about the curriculum work that's going on. We are currently updating our kindergarten curriculum to the Common Core state standards for math. We are in the process of developing the literacy curriculum, and we have just recently begun our first movements toward developing the social and emotional learning curriculum. Additionally, as we would work toward all-day kindergarten, we would take our existing curriculum for science, social studies, art, music, and physical education, and then work with that so that we could support our teachers in delivering that curriculum with the increased time allocations. And then last but not least, we want to make sure that our efforts intentionally provide work with developing the curriculum for critical thinking, application, and reflection in all of those areas. In terms of working with curriculum and instruction, it's imperative that we lay out our assessment. If we go back to the slide, that we lay out our assessment. We have already begun work in laying out the assessments for literacy. We're working on identifying screeners and the assessments for math, and then also looking at social and emotional learning inventories. Those are observational inventories where you would obviously observe the students and then look for changes in behavior over time. And then lastly, we are very intentionally looking at instructional practices. And we've already begun that work with our kindergarten teachers on working with culturally responsive teaching and certain areas of math and literacy, and then also in developmentally appropriate teaching.
We want to talk with you a little bit now about the logistical and operational considerations that we're planning for. First of all, communication to families will be key. We want to make sure that we provide parents with FAQ, letter from the superintendent, information on our website, and of course, information to the press. Then we would have a request that each school hosts a school-based family information night. We'd send out information to families, including options for the half-day program. By law, we need to offer that. And then, of course, the typical welcoming activities for new and returning families as the new school year begins. We'd also be evaluating each school site's needs for instructional materials and furnishings, including technology, to make sure that all the kindergarten classrooms were provisioned in the same way. Transportation, we'd need to look at how we would modify routes to accommodate all-day kindergarten and the half-day option. And then we'd be looking at scheduling and logistical considerations, including locations for that half-day kindergarten program, increased staffing that we would need, and each school, of course, would have to modify their schedules around art, music, and PE, and revise their lunch and recess schedule to include kindergartners.
I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the expenditures that we would be looking at with all-day kindergarten, and start with the estimated construction costs, focusing on the Title I identified schools. You know, we had some conversation about all-day kindergarten in our buildings in the last year, and with our 5-section schools targeting about 750 students, we need 30 classrooms as well as a multi-purpose room gymnasium space. With our 4-section schools, which targets about 600 students, we would need 24 classrooms as well as a multi-purpose gymnasium space for scheduling. At a 3-section school targeting about 450 students, we would need 18 classrooms. And at 2-section schools targeting 300 students, we would need 12 classrooms. So how do our schools, our Title I schools in particular, stack up against this? At Mill Street School, we have adequate space, so no construction is necessary there. At Beebe, we did a move for the Phase 1 of our attendance reassignment, where that school that was formerly a 5-section school is now approaching 4-section school as far as enrollment is concerned. And as a 4-section school, there is adequate space within that building. Riverwoods and Elmwood both have adequate space. Scott School was a 4-section school, but that current attendance area has an enrollment that approaches a 3-section school. So as a 3-section school, it has adequate space. Napier and Ellsworth are our two 300-student or 2-section schools. Both of those buildings have 11 classrooms and would need 12. At Ellsworth, we believe we could remodel the existing LRC PI Plus office space. This is a addition that was done in 2001 at that school for approximately $300,000, and this could be done in the summer of 2013. At Napier School, the best option would be a construction addition to that building. The estimated cost we received from our architect was about $1 million, and going through the planning and design, it would be best to accomplish that in the 2014 summer of 2014. As far as the operating costs are concerned, our current budget has some allocation for planning and redesign of our curriculum for kindergarten. For 2013-14, we would presume to do a continuation of that, and then if we were to have all-day kindergarten at our Title I identified schools, we'd have to start purchasing some furniture and equipment relative to that expansion. Operating costs would be about $1,075,000. This includes about 11.5 FTE teachers and other costs such as classroom assistants. We'd anticipate serving 535 students with this. While there are costs, there are certainly some offsets as well. The school district, our school district, gets general state aid based on the attendance of our students in our schools. Because the attendance for kindergarten at the Title I schools would increase from 1 half day to a full day, we would get additional general state aid from the state, approximately $111,000. Additionally, we have some extended day programs for kindergartners at these Title I identified schools now. The all-day kindergarten would take the place of those programs, so that would be an additional offset within the budget. So the total cost next year would be in the neighborhood of $900,000. Should it be extended to all schools in the future, we would anticipate a cost of approximately $2.1 million, a total of 22.5 FTE teachers, serving an estimated 1,053 kindergarten students. General state aid again would increase because of going from 1 half day to full day to about an additional $217,000. The extended day programs that we have at those other buildings would be offset as well with the full-day kindergarten at all of our buildings, and that's about an additional $600,000. So the overall incremental cost at all buildings would be about $1.3 million for the school district. The current extended K at the Title I identified schools is chiefly the dual language program that we have at some of those schools. And then also the BB has a Title I identified classroom. So there's fewer extended day programs at those Title I identified schools. We would still have to have some intervention programs that we currently have because those are district-wide. So we'd have to continue to operate those. It's not having it just at the Title I schools doesn't obviate the need to still have those programs.
So now if we look at this next slide, it simply outlines the schools that are our Title I schools where we're proposing to provide all-day kindergarten next year. You can see the current enrollment, you can see the projected enrollment with all-day kindergarten, thinking that more families would elect to come to us in kindergarten rather than a private kindergarten situation, and then also the projected sections for all-day kindergarten.
And a very similar chart if it were to go to all day in the future. Again, the projected enrollment would increase because we're anticipating that we would have additional enrollment at kindergarten. And we've talked about this a little bit again over the past year when one looks at our cohort. In other words, the increase in students that we have going from kindergarten to first grade to second grade, et cetera, right now, we have a substantial increase in enrollment from kindergarten to first grade. So if we have all-day kindergarten, we would anticipate that some of the kindergarten-eligible children that do not utilize our school right now would come back to the public school system. So we'd likely see an increase in our kindergarten attendance. Projected sections are shown there. And as far as the site modifications that would need to be done, we already discussed Ellsworth and Naper. Highland School is a 4-section school currently and would need at least 3 sections of kindergarten. We would have to determine how we would accomplish that. It could be done either through construction or it could be done through an attendance area change. Ranchview School currently is a 4-section school. It received some students through our Phase 1 attendance area change when we did that change with Beebe, Steeple Run, and Ranchview all intertwined. Should all-day kindergarten go to Ranchview, we'd have to have some additional construction at that building, likely 2 additional kindergarten classrooms. I'm supposed to mention also that we have 3 schools, Elmwood, Steeple Run, and Prairie, that we already have budgeted some work at and have that planning and design. Gymnasium at Elmwood, gymnasium at Prairie, and a multipurpose room at Steeple Run.
As with any of our programs, we want to make sure that we're using data to evaluate programs and actually get better at doing that as a system. It's something that we'd like to provide the appropriate indicators to look at any kind of new type of program. When it comes to the program evaluation in year 1 for this, we've already implemented this year in terms of literacy at the kindergarten level. We've started the assessment using the ISIL assessment in alphabet recognition, letter, sound, and phonemic awareness. We're giving that up to 3 times a year in the kindergarten year to help understand our student progress. We'll be able to use that as part of the program evaluation in that first year. We'll also need to take and research what appropriate math types of assessments would be needed, and also social emotional inventories to evaluate the program. We will be developing those types of surveys for stakeholders in order to get the responses from those who are involved and get their feedback on the program. And then also we'll need to make sure that we monitor the implementation, that it's being implemented with fidelity by monitoring the program and seeing how the curriculum and the structures that we put in place are implemented in the kindergarten program. In year 2, we'll continue those academic indicators as part of the system, and we'll then also monitor the progress of our students as they move on to first grade to see how their transition to first grade is as a cohort, and monitor their data there as well. And then we'll also be looking to see, as we provide all-day kindergarten, we will also be, at that point, keeping more students in the core curriculum as part of what we do, and seeing how that impacts what interventions and how our students are progressing and the needs for those in the future as well.
So at the January 7th meeting, the administration would be asking that the Board of Education authorize all-day kindergarten for Title I identified schools beginning in 13-14. And throughout the course of the first half of this year, we would be continuing to study the impact of offering all-day kindergarten in all of our schools as early as the 2014-2015 school year. There's much more research and work that we need to do before we are prepared to make that recommendation to this board. So the action we will be asking for on January 7th is the authorization of the all-day kindergarten program at the Title I identified schools beginning in 2013-2014. A passionate group of educators that have worked hard on this presentation and are prepared to answer your questions.
Our current all-day kindergarten program is for Title I students only, correct? The ones that we have?
We have one extended day program, and that's
Extended day,
at
I'm
BB.
sorry.
Yeah.
So those are only Title I. Can you know, the one thing that you've told us kind of over and over again in your research, which isn't on here, is that regular ed kids don't have the same jumps in they don't move along the, what am I trying to say? The performance as quick, you know, they're already up there. So at the Title I schools, it's going to be all-day kindergarten for all kids. Can you address that so that we can see the value in all the kids?
So we do see value in all kids having it.
Okay.
And what we see is value added for everyone. The other thing we see is kids have gifts in many different places. So let's consider the student who's high performing. One question somebody might ask is, why them? If you think about it, first of all, as the world's changing, as our standards are changing, they too will need the opportunity for that curiosity and discovery and to engage in the social and emotional learning. We feel that the all-day kindergarten provides them with that option. The other thing that it does is it provides our teachers and our kids opportunities, and you hear this statement from us all the time, to differentiate their learning. But what that really means for our high-performing kids is that we get to find out where we are, and we get more time to work with them to take them to higher levels of learning. And then when you look at our students who might be performing what we say, you know, right on target, they're exactly where they should be, we get the opportunity too to get to know them better, to look at them from an assessment standpoint of where they are, and then also meet their needs. And then for our lowest performing, we get the opportunity to work with them in whole group, small group, in partners, and a lot more different, and that's one of the things that we shared last year, is that there are a lot of different instructional configurations and learning configurations that you can implement with more time.
And when's the first time you start testing our youngest students under the Common Core?
I'm going to make sure Tim answers that for the youngest.
At this point, the plan is in 2 years that the testing will occur at third grade, but there are also plans where the Park assessment is talking about how to possibly do like a portfolio type assessment at the youngest grade. So that's still in discussion, so it's not sure whether that will come about, but that could look like a portfolio of not only scores like we have for the ISIL, but also other types of social emotional types of progress as well.
Because as I've addressed before, I'm always concerned about just teaching to the test, especially when you're, you know, at the younger grades.
I think I think that really argues for all-day kindergarten.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we're not squeezing out the things that 5- and 6-year-olds need. And, you know, if we enter into this place of focusing all our attention on the academics, then we have to make a sacrifice somewhere. Either we're going to sacrifice on some of the academics so that, you know, we treat kids respectfully and help them learn in the way that they need to, or we're going to, you know, squeeze out some of the other things. So that's a rationale for that.
And you're comfortable with the, you know, you said the word equity in there. You're comfortable with kind of phasing this in over 2 years? You know, the kids that wouldn't get full day at not the Title I schools, you don't feel that they'd be behind or anything?
I think what this allows us to do is work toward that picture of equity, and it's not where we want it to be ultimately, but it allows us to take the first step to work toward that.
And then what about the kids that are in half day? How does that affect, you know, again, maybe the equity or what they're learning, so that by the time they start first grade, will they be behind? How would that?
Families who would choose half-day,
Yes.
we would do everything that we can to make sure that they're not behind and that they're not more at risk. But in fact, that's a choice that parents will make, and we will differentiate learning for those children in the time that we have them in half-day program and as they enter first grade.
I have 2 more questions.
Can I speak
Sure.
to that too, just curricularly? There's something very intentional that we're doing with curriculum design, and that is making sure that there are certain core elements that all kids will get, no matter whether that's the half-day program or the full-day program. And then the full-day program, you know, adds the time element in there for more learning and more instruction.
Dave, I have a question for you specifically. On the offsets, wouldn't the midday bus runs have a different offset? That I didn't see that listed. Would that be included?
You know, we looked at that quite a bit. One of the concerns that we have is what will be our required routing restructuring, because we'll have more students at the basic morning and afternoon routes.
To move less times.
To move, exactly. So we might have to use some of what you would have offset at midday at that morning and afternoon runs. So I'm
Okay.
reluctant to throw something out there that we might end up utilizing anyway.
And then the last question I have on the Title I identified schools for the 13-14 year. I was just curious, this one's for Dave, where the addition would go at Naper. I'm just curious. I thought they were landlocked there.
I know Craig went out there and looked at it, and I believe it's on the northeast end of the school.
I understand.
Okay.
Okay. That was something that just stuck in my head from when we went through the facilities.
Yes. The
So-
gymnasium is up there, you have the playground on the north end of it, so towards the street, right.
East by the playground?
Yeah. Well,
By the alley back there behind, by the funeral home, closest to the funeral home, right? That's the north.
no, no,
That's
the other,
northwest.
that's northwest.
Northeast is by the street, right?
East would be out the other
Near
way.
the library addition.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they're landlocked, but they still have land. I mean, you're
I
taking
thought we
them.
had no space. And then the one question on there was Riverwoods. Their current enrollment says 39 and their projected enrollment says 73. And that change was much larger than any of the others.
One of the things, Mrs. Crotty, that
Thank you. One of the things that we are doing next year, irrespective of all-day kindergarten, is to move the dual language program from Maplebrook to Riverwoods. It's really a function of space that exists at Maplebrook and not related to all-day kindergarten.
And that changes Maplebrook from being a Title I school
Yes,
to
it does.
the other school. Okay.
I have a question on the schedule. I think it's for Dave, on the operational, sorry, my computer went to sleep. On the operational, the schedule of operating costs. And I want to make sure I understand this. The startup costs, I understand. Operating costs, there's 7, coincidentally, there's 7 schools that would start in the 2012-13 year, and then the other 7 that would be projected to start the year after. Understand where the operating costs are, where it's another $1 million. The general and state aid, I get that. The part that I just didn't understand you. Current kindergarten extension, is that what that means? Where we go from the reduction of $160,000 to when we go to all schools at $609,000? Explain that to me again.
The only programs that we currently offer that would be affected by the offering at the Title I are the dual language extended day.
Right.
And then the single BB Title I.
Right.
There are dual language extended day at the other schools, plus there are intervention extended day programs that we have for all the students within the school district. That latter part, those intervention extended day programs, wouldn't be able to be removed until we go for all-day kindergarten at all schools. So it's more than double of the first one because of those programs in particular that would have to be maintained until we had all-day kindergarten throughout the district.
Okay. Yeah, and that's actually what I was thinking about. I thought, well, if they're in the Title I schools, and these are basically Title I dollars, and we're going to those schools, why would that offset be so great the second year? Do you see what I mean? I don't need to, as long as you crunch the numbers, that's fine. I would have think that it wouldn't be as great, the jump wouldn't have been as great because those extra interventions you're saying are or are not in Title I schools.
That is correct. They are not in Title I schools.
There you go. That's the
To simplify for everybody, I think what I understood before, because Dave asked the same question, is we don't get to eliminate the district-wide programs.
No, yeah.
And a big chunk of that, and we didn't get into this detail, is transportation, obviously, because we're transporting a lot of these kids for the half-day programs to another location, and that would all be saved, but we can't save that.
I got that. I guess what I didn't realize is that so many of the Title I programs were in non-Title I schools. You know, the extended ones.
I think you're misinterpreting that the only extended day is Title I, which is not the case.
I'm sorry. Yeah, at risk. I should say at risk.
At risk,
not,
right.
Not Title I, sorry.
That's correct.
Got it. Thanks.
Talk to me a little bit about it, because I know this came up. We're talking about Ranch View. We moved kids, we sort of tiled them down from BB to then Steeple Run and to Ranch View. And we were talking about all-day kindergarten. We understood that Ranch View, we're putting the kids in there, that we need to do construction. Why did we make those choices? I think I know the answer. I'd just like you to talk a little bit about that, why we made those choices, knowing that we might have to do some construction at Ranch View.
I think we were trying to look at where we would be able to best accommodate students given the kind of buildings that we had and their locations. When one had to alleviate BB of some of the overcrowding and also make some of the impact that we wanted to do with that, the most logical place to have students go from BB would be Steeple Run because of that location. But once we did that, we had the same problem. It's the domino effect. Steeple Run was already full. By doing the same thing, we then had to look at what would be the most logical location, giving the enrollment that we needed to move out of Steeple Run for those students to go to, and where did we have that kind of space, and that was Ranch View.
And my understanding, too, is that Ranch View had the space, that adding onto Ranch View was relatively easy and inexpensive related to other schools as opposed to other schools.
Yes, I think one of the pros at Ranch View is that we have a very large gymnasium, over 7,000 square feet. So to be able to accommodate that gymnasium multi-purpose room use, because when we go to any kind of all-day kindergarten, the scheduling becomes an issue. That building already has quite a bit of space that we could use.
And then one more question. Have you thought about at all, and the answer certainly could be no, if and when we move to all-day kindergarten district-wide, we do have to offer half-day programs, where would we do those? Because that's additional space that we'd have to have, right?
Yes, and what we would do is we would look at locations that have room. We'd look at locations that are on the north and south end of town, possibly even the middle part of our district. We using the District 204's results, they had so few children actually enroll for half-day that it was almost a non-issue. But children enrolling in half-day would not necessarily be at their home school. We do it on a basis of space.
Do we? Okay, and then do we have sort of a threshold that we have to reach where we say we have to provide it? I mean, if we've got 6 people who say we want half-day, they get half-day?
My understanding is we have to, by law, we must provide it.
Okay. But it's not necessarily going to be at the home school?
No. I wouldn't anticipate that in most cases it would be.
But would we still bus them? We'd still pick up those 6 kids?
We would have to bus them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we comments I wanted clarification. First, Dan, you had said that before you were be ready to recommend all schools, there was extensive analysis or something. What would you have to see before you recommended?
Most of what we need to look at are some of the logistical and operational costs and impacts that it would have on our district. As you saw from the ADK All Schools graph regarding site modifications, still working with our architects to determine potential additions compared to costs of boundary changes or assignments changes. So those would be the focus of what we need to work on. Not necessarily anything programmatically.
Well,
the
that's
operational
just
physical costs.
logistics. You're saying whether we build or whether we do boundaries, that has nothing to do with whether you would go forward with the full recommendation.
That's what I understood your question to be. If you're asking me if
Well,
I am interested in moving forward, so maybe you could repeat your question.
Well, you had said, read fairly eloquently, that there had to be extensive analysis and research before you could recommend we move ahead with the second part.
In the area of operations and logistics.
Okay. So as far as you're concerned, this is a done deal. We need to have all-day kindergarten in all our schools.
My opinion is that, yes, we should offer all-day kindergarten at all schools.
Okay. Second question is, you showed us the 4 models you looked at, everything all across. Just, did you look, because I think this was really what we asked you to look at, did you look at offering all-day kindergarten for all Title I children next year?
Yes, we did. And we felt that to segregate children into a homogeneous group of kids who were identified because they were at risk wouldn't serve those children. Those children need to be in school with their typical peers. We felt that the modeling that would be provided for those students by being in a rich classroom with students with all different kinds of abilities serves those children best.
Well, I guess I can understand that, but it's still not what we asked you for. I've got to admit, and I've talked with several of you privately, I just want to say that publicly, I'm not, but I literally have a pit in my stomach because I'm so emotional about this, because we were promised that we would not be asked to make any more significant commitments to starting and launching programs until we had at least a 3-year strategic plan in place. We do not have a 3-year strategic plan in place. And again, in all due respect, and I've talked privately with people, so I think I can say this without hurting their feelings. I just want to be understood by the rest of us. It feels to me like you've done an end run around this. I mean, we said it seemed there was a very clear consensus on the part of this Board of Education that at-risk children irrefutably gain insurmountable advantage through early intervention. And we said, absolutely move forward on that. I felt like there was great question on whether there was efficacy in doing it for 100% of our students. Now, the response I got initially, and I also specifically asked, I haven't heard it respond to, was what are we doing to communicate to at-risk students for early intervention? I know I very specifically asked that be addressed, and I haven't seen that addressed. Now, privately, I was told that we haven't been very successful on it, and I think the reason is we haven't done much about it. And the second strategic model is huge for me, and we just keep bringing an exception to that. Second, though, is on the slide 8, you had something, equitable, and something. All started with E's, very nice. I cannot support bringing 100% to 100% of half of our population and leaving a significant population who are truly needy this program. How is that equitable? I don't understand. And when we say Title I school, the highest percentage of Title I children in our highest percentage school is what, 23%? 23%. And the seventh one down, which is the average is what, 15%? 13%. Okay, so, what was explained to me is we're going to take anyone that's got 13% or over of Title I. Now understand what we're saying. That means we're bringing services to 80% of the children that are not Title I. And over here, just because they happen to be in a school where there's not 13% of their colleagues that are Title I, we're not going to bring those services to them. I can't believe there's not a way that we can address this, and far more cost effective to do it in every school on a basis only addressing Title I. Yep, there would be busing issues because you have different schedules and all that, but surely we have the brain power to do that. So one, I just, unless we're approving the whole plan now, and obviously there's no way I'm ready to do that, how can we support a recommendation that at least half of our kids out in the cold, hoping that we will be able to approve it? What if worst case scenario comes down the road and we have full pension loads shifted to us? I guarantee you we're not going to be building any buildings or launching.
Dave, can I ask you a question? And I don't...
The only question is, do we want to give the administration a chance? There was
Oh,
probably a
okay.
question
I just want a
in there somewhere.
clarification.
I'll just briefly respond to part of it. My understanding, in this administration's understanding, from the November 5th Board of Education meeting was that the board authorized us to develop a targeted program for all-day kindergarten, which is what we have done. Our desire and our belief is that when you talk about serving all of our populations of all of our at-risk students, we agree with you. We'd like to see it in all schools so that we can do that, so that we can offer those opportunities to all of our students. Jen's talked about the benefits that all of our students would gain from additional instructional time, access to more curriculum, more engagement with a qualified teacher. And so we think our end game, yes, that's where we would like to be, where we make this available to all of our students. So I believe our recommendation is consistent with the authorization that we received from the Board of Education in the November meeting.
What was the target that you were looking at? You say you've brought a targeted goal. Our target was at-risk students.
I'll just say one thing, though. I mean, I'm sorry for cutting off Jackie because I wanted administration, but using we and our pretty liberally there, my understanding was way different than yours because I understood at-risk schools, and I would never support at-risk students in a school. So I would not support that. I'll give everybody else a chance to weigh in, but.
I will say-
I appreciate that because
Dave?
I had a completely different understanding. It's very important to clarify that. I appreciate that, Mike.
And Dave, as a follow-up to that, I think what public education means to me is that you are in with all different types of learners. And that would be if we just targeted, if this administration, it would be very offensive to me if they were just to target an at-risk group and say, you will just be in your own little pool. That is against, philosophically to me, everything about
We do that all the
public
time with
education.
intervention.
Let know what, somebody else needs to talk now. So my question is, and what I had understood, I was very concerned about the assessment. Now, I understand there cannot be formal assessments before the trigger date for the second set of 7 schools. But there is tremendous amount of anecdotal, these are very experienced teachers. Pardon me?
Qualitative assessment.
Right, qualitative assessments. So we have lots of information we can get from teachers to make sure this is really working. They're working on it now to make sure this program, to let our community know it's right for our community. We've heard from some people, well, we've heard about it, but we're not sure it's right for our set of students. I think you've convinced me in many of these sessions, it will bring all students up. It will help all students. So, thank you.
Terry.
Dan, first of all, it's a good plan, and it's very easy to understand. But did I hear you say that you're going to ignore the other Title I students in the other facilities, or do we have some programs in there that we can help them with?
Let's be thoughtful about how we're using the description of Title I kids. First of all, when we talk about the Title I kids are students who are in our Title I identified schools. And when we use the term at-risk students who may be identified for whatever reason as being at risk of failure or at risk of difficulty in school, yes, we do things in those classrooms, and those students will not be ignored.
They are not being ignored.
Not being ignored. Not being ignored right now. They won't be ignored in the future.
Because you were saying the $609,000 for those programs that you're extending over into the second year will continue in the first year.
Yeah, I just think it's a good idea, and it's consistent with what we talked about last time. The other thing, I think your approach on this is a little bit more pragmatic, and you're taking a little bit more time to study it, which I think is very good, in particular when it comes to if we need to do any additions at Highlands. I mean, that needs to be studied pretty thoroughly before we move forward with that. But I think that the approach gives us some basis to analyze all that kindergarten and what we want to do with it, at least for a year before we go ahead and roll it out to all the facilities and to branch it out that way. I'm happy with what you've given us, and I think it's a good path to go down.
Second that too, Terry. I think exactly. The only other thing that I would like to see contextually is if you could drop this into the operating into the overall budget, just to see the impact on that. I mean, I know it's nickels and dimes. The only other question I'd ask you, and I'm almost certain I know the answer to it, but I think it would probably be helpful for the people sitting out there that have seen slide 16. Jackie touched on it earlier, and it was the same question I had: the general state aid and the extension. If you're to crystal ball this, is any of that at risk, given the strong financial situation with our state?
Let me touch on the one first. The projection that the Board of Education was presented with in November does include what we just showed you there. So it does include the implementation of both the Title I and the all-day kindergarten at all schools. Then the other question about the possibility of risking some of that funding, I think there's always a risk because of the uncertainty that we have at the state level. I think there's something we hope to have a little bit of clarity on would, for example, be the pension cost shift this spring. I believe we're still looking at a couple of years of what could happen, both based on the fact that the income tax was passed on a temporary basis for the state. So I don't know what that impact would be. The particular category of general state aid formula that we're in is probably less likely to be impacted. There's another group at the flat grant level that might be eliminated. We're not in that group. So, there can certainly be a chance, it's probably better than 50-50, that we would not see the kind of elimination for a general state aid that other group would see.
I'm just responding to something else that Dave said, and then expressing my support for this plan. I remember what you were talking about in the 3 years. It was at our second meeting in February when we were at Naperville Central High School, and you discussed this. And what the discussion the board had was that Common Core, because that had been the emphasis. Kathy Duncan did a presentation that had been the emphasis, that Common Core was really shaping planning for the strategic planning and planning for the district, and that everything that we were doing, and there was really some macro planning and some thoughtful planning, was really centered around Common Core. This has been imposed upon us, but we're trying to get ahead of it and be innovative and thoughtful in how we are integrating Common Core into our curriculum. And that was my understanding, is that is really shaping a lot of what we do in very thoughtful ways, in very deep ways, in very rich ways. And that everything that we're doing is then aligning with that, which is, to some extent, what a strategic plan looks like. But I don't recall the board saying, again, the board did not say we need a strategic plan before we'll make any decisions. You said you'd like to see a 3-year strategic plan before we make any further decisions, but the board did not have any substantive conversation around that or any conversation around that. I feel very comfortable with what we're doing. I think we've heard a lot from our community. This has really sparked a lot of discussion, a lot of interest, a lot of passion. I think you've put together a plan. While we'd all like to see something happen tomorrow, we also want to be thoughtful. We've seen some other school districts implement something that is very well intended, and they've struggled. They've seen some great results from their students, but they've had some financial struggles. I appreciate that we're doing this over a period of time, although a relatively brief period of time, considering that, we're turning a big ship in big water. So I think that that's a good plan. It's laid out, and I think that we've been really thoughtful about it, and I think that makes for a more successful program in the end. So I'm fully supportive of this.
Okay. First of all, just for full disclosure, I actually have a grandson that I'll save $10,000 by taking advantage of this program. So it does affect me, and far be it from me. And I fully appreciate the distinctions that you're all making between the we and the me, and that's what discussion's for. Right. I appreciate you pointing that out. The fact of the matter is, though, that we are never going to undo this program. Why would we approve it in pieces? If you're going to do it, in my opinion, with integrity, we say we are going to all-day kindergarten across the board. It doesn't matter what your assessments show. It could show there's no difference at all. I'm not saying it's going to, because all the facts say it will accelerate first grade. Obviously, if you have extended, it's going to. The question is down the road. But let's say they came back and said, didn't make any difference at all. You're never taking this away, and you're certainly not going to stick with half of our schools with all day and the other half not. We're going to do all day kindergarten if we approve this across the board. Now, we don't know how. I still say I don't know why we're building additions on schools when we haven't done a resource plan. We still have 1,000 empty seats in junior high schools, and some of our buildings only hold 750. Why we would be going out and I mean, that's part of what a strategic plan is. But, there's no way that I ever want to be caught with half of our schools having and half not. Stage, I'm all for it, that's fine, but let's be honest about it. We're either going to do it or we're not going to do it.
I guess I want to comment to the audience that's here. We as a district, we had a hot lunch program that we considered doing about 5 years ago. I didn't like the idea that the schools right around, that my community, the families I saw at bus stops, they weren't going to get the program and that other schools were. But what we did in that situation, we didn't have the proper kitchens, we didn't have the delivery methodology worked out. We did it in a stepped process. It has turned out to be very successful. I believe that we're not going to take something back. We learn things when we do it in stepped fashion. I, for one, need to understand what those capital costs will be. And we don't know that right now. But we have something that has been blasted on us called Common Core that's going to happen in a year or two, and we've got to get this ball rolling. Sitting and waiting till we get all these design estimates. We worked on our big design plans in this district over multiple years. It takes a lot of time. We have a curricular group that has spent oodles of time getting this right. They are convinced they can get it right for a group of students, and we need to move on with it. And we will get to that next step. I don't have any feeling that we're not going to do it for the rest of the population. I think we'll be smarter, and we might make some refinements to the program that goes in next year with the group that's going in the following year. But we're going to have to get a handle on those costs, those capital costs, and that capital outlay. The operational costs aren't the problem. It's the capital outlay that we have to get a handle on. So, my 2 cents. I'm very supportive of your recommendation. Thank you for all your hard work.
Just a couple observations based on what I've heard so far. First of all, a couple people mentioned the multitude of tests. reports and stuff we've read about kindergarten, hundreds of pages. When every one of those reports I've seen, when the benefits fade out over the next several years of elementary school, you look at every one of them, none of those schools change their 1 through 3 curriculum. You pump up the kindergarten kids, and then you do the same thing with them for the next 3 years, they're going to regress to the mean. We're talking a new environment here where, as we've heard a million times now, our second graders are going to be performing at our current third grade level, on and on and on. So that is already a change, and when we do it, in the whole school, then you're able to move that whole school up predictably. So that's my observation on all those tests, all those reports that show, it fades out over a while and stuff like that. I think when you have the at-risk students, what you're doing is you're helping them meet the mean of that school anyway. So that's why it's probably more lasting. Just personal observations. Number 2, I would love with you guys to implement it everywhere. But, from what I've heard, and I think Dan has said this, we cannot physically do it next year. So the question is, do we push everything off, or do we implement it in the schools where we have decided that there is perhaps a larger need based on what we've seen? It's not guaranteed. There are obviously kids at other schools that can benefit also. We understand that. But we've already identified that Steeple Run and Prairie don't have the space now. Now, we've already budgeted in areas that will eventually give them the space. And as far as the empty seats, when you have an 11 classroom school, you don't have room for all-day kindergarten unless you bring it down to a 1 section school. So I don't think that's a player. When you have Ranch View with 22 classrooms, you have to bring it all the way down to a 3 section school before you have all-day kindergarten. So there are certain things that you can't just solve by, moving a couple kids here and there. And third, I've already said, I cannot support, singling out people in a school based on some criteria as broad as this, whether we use quote-unquote Title I, whether we use free and reduced lunch, whether we use at risk, and saying, okay, you guys, half the school or 23% of the school gets this program. Because if you use one criteria with 23%, one of those kids could be a Nobel Prize winner right now, and somebody in the 77% probably really needs the help. And then, what is the effect on those kids when they enter first grade? Are they all going to be channeled through first through fifth, in one cohort? I can't see that either. I think this is the best compromise we can do based on the space limitations more than anything. And then, in those, we're targeting the schools where we have an idea it may benefit the most, and we've always been a district that tries to get the most bang out of the buck. Eventually, I'll be out there. I fully support this program, and I fully support all the kindergarten for everybody. We just can't do it as quickly as I would like or as the administration would like. I don't think it's just logistically or economically feasible, and hopefully we can get there in a considered manner. So those are my observations and comments. In case I didn't say it enough, I also support it. So unless something changes by January 7th, you're going to continue to hear that support. So more discussions, questions, comments? You're done with kindergarten, right? I will remind everybody, first of all, wonderful job. I think you've heard that a couple times. We don't make decisions hastily, and we put out as much information as we can. This is for the public now, obviously. We need to act on this in January so that we can prepare, if we are going to move forward with this, so we can prepare for the 13-14 school year. Obviously, we do have some holidays coming up, but I still invite everybody that hasn't contacted us already to please share your opinions as we move forward. We're always receptive to that, and I think we all collectively look forward to hearing from that. Dave?
Just a comment, and I appreciate the input that the board's given, and it's all valid. I'm still going to oppose it, but I'm doing it in the spirit of of trying to learn. And I just want to make clear, I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying do it all at once. What I am saying is we are essentially saying and approving all-day kindergarten. We still have to work out the details, and we're going to do it as quick as we can. We're going to do it, this here. So, I wasn't suggesting all or nothing at all.
No, and
I will put out a plea that, and this is more early childhood, getting to the people that are at risk in early childhood. I just don't think we're doing a good job, and I actually think that both of the people I talked to agreed with that. We've got to get word out to the pediatricians. We've got to get out and that will, if all-day kindergartens can help this, getting the right people into our early intervention programs will help even more. And I really would like to see that addressed. Thank you.
any other questions or comments?
Just one more comment.
No, go right ahead. That's why we're here.
That's right. It's early.
Hey, going back to earlier in the year, I think one of the things that I had asked for was a really solid financial plan that moving forward, or something that made sense. And you're at least on the right path with that, and taking the time to look at it. You got the numbers in the right place. They haven't jumped all over the road like they did earlier in the year. So I'm at least much happier with that. And I do think the segmented approach is the correct way to go for a myriad of reasons. But Dan, I think you've accomplished what you should have accomplished at this stage for us.
You guys got anything? Thank you.
Michael.
Okay, now we're actually going to act on stuff. So,
Yeehaw, right.
and it's not really minor either. 2012 tax levy adoption.
You have before you a resolution for our 2012 tax levy, and consistent with the recommendation was made back in November, we are recommending that the Board of Education levy the amount that's allowed under the tax cap. The Finance Committee will meet on February 13th to review any potential action taken by the General Assembly, with the possibility that there would be a recommendation for an abatement of this levy that we would recommend you pass today. Also, the debt service levy, which is about $3.1 million, would also be coming back to you in the spring for an abatement of that amount as well.
Okay, and just since we are streaming live and many more people are watching us now, do you just want to explain what that debt service levy refers to again?
Sure. The debt service levy is for the bonds that were issued pursuant to the 2008 referendum for our construction program for Naperville Central High School, Mill Street, building the Early Childhood Center. So about $100 million worth of projects. The district has abated the debt service levy, so the amount that the taxpayers were anticipating paying towards those bonds, they have not yet.
Right.
We've abated that. This will be the fourth or fifth year out of, I think there's only 1 year where we actually levied it. Fourth year? So 4 out of 5 years where we've actually abated that amount to the taxpayer each year.
Well, this would be the fourth year.
Right.
This would be the fourth year. Yeah. Just want to make sure that was clear to everybody watching. Okay. And everybody that is watching, if you look under board docs, there is a very thorough, detailed letter from Mr. Zager describing this in more detail. So if you want to do further research.
I'll move approval of item 10.01, 2012 tax levy adoption as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the 2012 tax levy as presented. Any further discussion or questions? Dave?
Yeah, I want to score. I certainly support this. We have to do it. I do want to remind and underscore that, if I recall correctly, Dave, the Finance Committee strongly recommended that we reconsider this when we have all the facts in at the right time. So hopefully we'll be taking
They've added a
action
meeting.
down the road and undoing a little bit of this at
The
least.
Finance Committee, Dave, added a meeting in February to see if some of the uncertainty of...
Right, that's what I said.
Okay.
Are there any comments? Are there further questions? Roll call.
Romberg,
Yes.
Fielden,
Yes.
Dennison.
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Crotty,
Yes.
Yench,
Aye.
Weeks.
Motion carries. Thank you. Alternative education.
Okay, at the last Board of Education meeting, Dr. Kate Foley did a presentation with a team recommending the approval of an agreement with Abraxas and Ombudsman. Dr. Foley can answer any questions that you may have regarding that presentation.
Are there any questions or comments or motions?
I move approval of Mike. I'm sorry, did I jump too quick?
No, you
Do
just
we have
got to turn your
questions?
mic on.
Oh,
Come on,
sorry.
we're transmitting live worldwide.
Okay, sorry.
Worldwide.
Move approval of 10.02, recommendation for alternative education.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the alternative education program as recommended. Comments, questions? We did talk about this last month, so once again, it's all online now. Almost last year. It's still last month. But it's all, is it that time again? People getting punchy?
9 o'clock.
Nothing else? Roll call.
Yench,
Aye.
Price,
Yes.
Dennison. Yes. Weeks. Aye. Fielden,
Yes.
Romberg,
Yes.
Crotty,
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, any new or old business? Then, oh, look, winter break. Starting after this week. Class is back in January 7th, and we have our next board meeting January 7th. So,
You ready for your last final exams?
Well, I might have them
Oh,
maybe
never
have some
mind.
AP tests and stuff.
Never mind.
I would like to point out to everybody, if you have not seen it yet, you can find it on the 203 website or the NEF website. They are having their Yucks for Youth program on January 26th at Wentz Hall at North Central College. It's Second City, and they're actually going to be working with some of our high school students in their bringing them into their comedy troupe. So I highly recommend it, and it's obviously for a very worthy cause. Without any further points, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned.